Hello everyone, welcome to another video. And in this video, as you guys have already guessed, we are going to discuss chapter 12 from the book Psychology of Money, written by Morgan Housel. And the name of the chapter is Surprise. And so, what we're going to discuss in this chapter is how this world is actually very surprising, and it's very hard to predict what's going to happen financially in the future, or what events will influence the financial future of the market, and how it's very hard to predict them basically. So we're going to start off with this very ironic point, which is history is basically the study of the surprising events in the past, but ironically, it is used as a guide to the future, events by the economist, which is kind of like contradicting, because it is the study of the surprising events, and if you are actually predicting something and based on that which is surprising in the first place, then it doesn't really make any sense, right? And this logic will probably work for most of the hard sciences, like for example, like geology, for example. So a geologist can look at some samples from the past, and he can probably base some assumptions about it based on the evidence that he has at his hand, right? But that doesn't really actually apply to finance or investments, and the reason is the way the market moves is actually very dependent upon how people are feeling, what kind of stories they are basically telling themselves, and what kind of likings or dislikings do they have at that time towards some goods and services. And the thing is, these two things, that the stories that people tell themselves and their liking, disliking for a given good and services, it changes over time, and it also depends on the cultural and the thinking of the people as well. So these things are very hard to predict, and these things actually influence the market, the finance market at least, or the investment market at least. Someone said that physics would have been way difficult if the atoms had emotions. Then it would have been really difficult to predict or to understand physics in the first place. And that's how, unfortunately, the investments work. So one thing that we have to actually understand when it comes to investing and looking at the past uh, is that if you have experienced some past events, if you have gone through them, there is a high certainty that that experience is probably not going to help you make decisions in the future, when it comes to finance, at least when it comes to investing. Uh, and now we will see what actually happens if we rely too much on the history in order to make decisions of the future. So what happens is, we first of all, the first thing that we are going to discuss in this chapter is that we tend to miss the outlier events that have the most influence. Um, so what do I mean by that? What are those outlier events? So outlier events are basically like a record-breaking events. Um, they are something that we haven't experienced before, and they influence the market and economy and the stock market, and they're really unpredictable. And the impact of those outlier events, those very few outlier events, is very huge, and they affect, and you can really see the effects of those outlier events. Um, to put it into some simpler, to make it more easily understandable, we can look at an example of humans. So between the 19th and the 20th century, 15 billion people have basically they were born. 15 billion people were born, and out of those 15 billion people, there were some record-breaking people, like some outliers that actually influenced um, that that had like a big influence on the way we live, um, and the way we experience life basically these days. So I will give you an example of a few of those people. Hitler comes to mind, Stalin comes to mind, Mao comes to mind. Then you have Edison, Thomas Edison, you have Bill Gates, and then you have Martin Luther King. So these people have influenced the physical borders, the geographical borders that we have today. They have influenced the technology, and they have also influenced the social norms by which we live. So a handful of these people, you could say this is like 0.0000004% of the whole population of 15 billion people. But the influence of these people has had way more impact than the rest of the people that we had. And the same thing could be said about events, some innovations, and some projects as well. For example, the Great Depression had a big influence, the World War II, the invention of vaccines, antibiotics, the unfortunate event of 9/11, and the dissolution of Soviet Union. So these events um, were they also had like a very big influence, and and so whatever, and we could also say like whatever is happening right now, or whatever is going to happen in the future economically, that can actually be tied to a very few very impactful events in the past actually. And those impactful events are really hard to predict in the future, for the future, like what's going to happen in the future basically. And this is the thing, we as humans, we tend to think of the worst case scenarios uh, when we think about our future investment strategies. We think, okay, the Great Depression happened, the World War II happened, and so you would think that that would kind of like give you an idea, or like how things would be in the future. But if you look at those events themselves, the Great Depression and the World War II, there was nothing like that in the history before they actually happened. So they were in fact unprecedented events. Something like that had never happened before. So it kind of like doesn't really make sense if you base your future plannings based on events that were actually unprecedented. So there is a high possibility that whatever is going to impact on the future market, the future the future economy, is also going to be unprecedented. Something like that is would probably has probably not ever happened before. So this is like a common fallacy that we have, or the things that we tend to ignore when we are thinking about the future. Um, so so yeah. So the thing is, on the lesson here, we can basically um, tell ourselves is like, what can we do if things are going to be unprecedented? Then what is the best solution in that case? And unfortunately, the author doesn't have like fix all solution for us. Um, and the thing is, this world is a very surprising place. It's full of surprises, um, and unfortunately, the things that are going to be influencing the economy, that the things that are going to be influencing our future returns in the investments, those things, uh, there we cannot actually predict them. They're gonna happen, and we will see. We will basically see how they would influence our lives, our investments, and everything else. Hmm. Yeah. So this is the first part of the chapter 12, surprise, and hopefully you learned something in this video. I'm gonna come up with the second part of this video of this chapter in a couple of days, and until then,